German finance minister makes surprise visit to Kyiv. Lars Klingbeil made an announced trip to the Ukrainian capital. In his first remarks, he underlined that Germany's support for Ukraine will not weaken and warned that Vladimir Putin should have no illusions about it. Klingbeil emphasized that Germany is the second largest supporter of Ukraine worldwide and the biggest in Europe. He added that Ukraine can continue to rely on Berlin's commitments, stressing the need for a ceasefire and reliable security guarantees to ensure lasting peace. He also noted that discussions are already underway on Ukraine's reconstruction and its prospects of joining the European Union.
Putin should have no illusions that Germany's support for Ukraine could crumble. On the contrary, we remain Ukraine's second-largest supporter worldwide and the largest in Europe.
Europe is selling its soul to Trump. Analysts warn of a strategic mistake. The decision by European Union leaders to accept US President Donald Trump's demands for higher defense spending and a new trade deal has sparked backlash among experts and politicians. According to Financial Times economic commentator Martin Sandbu, Europe's approach amounts to humiliation, economic capitulation, and rhetoric that seems borrowed from the adult entertainment industry. He argues that such concessions, dressed up as praise for Trump's supposed peacemaking skills, actually undermine both the EU's economic standing and its democratic legitimacy. Sandbu outlines three pillars of Europe's current strategy: exaggerated flattery toward Trump, attempts to avoid the worst-case scenarios such as a cutoff of support for Ukraine or a trade war, and empty promises that no one intends to keep but which the United States president accepts at face value. This is not pragmatism but opportunism, Sandbu writes, warning that by abandoning its principles, the EU has weakened its authority to lead a coalition defending the rules of global trade and has eroded the trust of its own voters. As an alternative, the columnist points to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's example. Despite Trump's harsh rhetoric, Zelensky publicly stood his ground and, in Sandbu's view, emerged stronger for it. Mother of Wagner Group leader Yevgeny Prigozhin, who was killed in August 2023, has spoken publicly for the first time about her final meeting with her son and his role in the failed mutiny against the Kremlin. In an interview with The Times, 85-year-old Violetta Prigozhin revealed that she tried to dissuade him from the march on Moscow. She said her son could not bring himself to fire on young cadets when Wagner forces seized military facilities on Rostov-on-Don in June 2023. He definitely did not intend to overthrow Putin, she insisted. Of course, that hardly sounds convincing, given that his mercenaries marched hundreds of kilometers toward Moscow and openly challenged the Kremlin's authority. Prigozhin, long known as Putin's chef, became a central figure in Russia's war on Ukraine, recruiting convicts and leading Wagner operations, including the brutal battle for Bakhmut. But after the failed uprising, his position shifted dramatically. Prigozhin died at 62 when his private jet crashed in Russia's Tver region, exactly 2 months after the rebellion. Officially, the cause of the crash has never been disclosed. The New Yorker described Prigozhin's death as Putin's deadly revenge, suggesting that his plane's explosion was a calculated reprisal for his rebellion. Prigozhin was not just Putin's victim, he was a war criminal. His Wagner mercenaries killed thousands of Ukrainians in Bakhmut and other battles. His death in a plane crash does not erase his responsibility. Alongside security guarantees, Europe must prepare new sanctions against Russia. Czech Foreign Minister Jan Lipavsky has emphasized that while Europe works on providing security guarantees for Ukraine, it must simultaneously prepare new sanctions against Russia. Lipavsky reminded that Kyiv had already agreed to an unconditional ceasefire back in March. He said, meanwhile, Vladimir Putin continues his aggression, some hope for ending the war now comes from the U.S. peace efforts by Donald Trump. The minister noted that more than 30 states in the so-called coalition of the willing are currently working on a framework of security guarantees for Ukraine. Lipovsky stated, Europe's task, alongside offering security guarantees, is to prepare further sanctions in case the Kremlin refuses to negotiate. EU foreign ministers are expected to discuss the 19th package of sanctions against Russia at their meeting in Copenhagen at the end of August, with a final decision possible as early as September. The bloc adopted its long-delayed 18th sanctions package on July 18 after overcoming resistance from Slovakia and Malta. Putin's demands on Ukraine are unrealistic and unacceptable. Finnish President Alexander Stubb has dismissed Vladimir Putin's conditions for ending the war in Ukraine and as unrealistic and impossible to accept. In his interview for Fox News One Nation, Stubb said Russia often puts forward extreme demands only to later withdraw them. Among Putin's latest terms are Ukraine giving up NATO membership, handing over the entire Donbass, and banning Western troops from being stationed in its territory. Stubb compared these demands to asking the United States to give up several states and allow a strategic route for an attack on New York, something he called practically impossible. He stressed that Putin only responds to strength, noting that US President Donald Trump plays a key role in shaping this response. Drawing on Finland's own history with the Soviet Union, Stubb underlined that the foundation of any state must be independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. According to him, Ukraine must preserve not only its independence, but also its full sovereignty and land, avoiding the territorial losses Finland once suffered. American filmmaker Woody Allen took part in the Moscow International Film Week, joining the event online for a conversation with the Russian director Fyodor Bondarchuk about cinema, life, and the role of intuition in his work. Ukraine's Minister of Foreign Affairs quickly reacted, calling Allen's appearance a disgrace and an insult to Ukrainian actors and filmmakers killed or wounded by Russian war and crimes. Russian media also announced appearance by Serbian director Emir Kusturica, known for his pro-Kremlin views, and American actor Mark Dacascos, who told reporters in Moscow that he loves the Russian capital. Just so you understand, sometimes the love for Russia knows no limits, and people often couldn't care less about the suffering of others. Culture is never outside politics. That's all from me. Subscribe for more content.